At that point of time, the whites thought and believed that they were the superior race, even though that the blacks were also American citizens, and the 14th Amendment defended this. Later, a series of Jim Crow laws were introduced, and the message that they gave was separate but equal. This was not the case. Schools were separated for blacks and whites, and schools for blacks had much poorer resources and facilities. And to add on to that, the blacks were deprived from work, they couldn't rent, couldn't vote, couldn't sit in the jury, and couldn't testify against white men, and they also couldn't carry weapons. To add on to the pain, many tensions have been brought up, such as the Dred Scott versus Sanford, and many others. The segregation was visible everywhere, outside, in the public, at schools. Such in the public, one of the examples is the buses. Black people had to give up their seats for whites if there wasn't enough seats, and if they refused to give up their seats, they would be arrested. The society did not really conform, but many people stood up for their rights. One of the important leaders of these non-violent protests was Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, aka Malcolm X, as well as Martin Luther King. Many non-violent protests were happening across the U.S., such as the Montgomery bus boycott and the Freedom Riders. In the Montgomery bus boycott, many people have boycotted the bus and refused to ride on it. Many of the bus riders were blacks, and this affected the bus company's economy very much. They developed carpooling systems to help transport one another. In the Freedom Riders, many whites and blacks traveled across the southern states of America in buses, and these preaching that segregation was not right and it should come to an end. Many of these buses were vandalized, the windows were broken, and many people were injured and or killed. Many people started to refuse to give up their seats for whites, and they were arrested. An example can be given to Rosa Parks. Also, blacks started to go to the white schools. They would be attacked by some white students. And there was a large organization called the KKK which opposed blacks and even murdered some. The government came to notice this, and what changed their thoughts was the case Brown versus Board Education. This decision overturned the Plessy versus Ferguson decision of 1896, which allowed state-sponsored segregation. Their decision was that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. As a result, racial segregation was ruled a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. This ruling paved the way for integration in the Civil Rights Movement, which also led to Martin Luther King Jr. giving his speech, "I Had a Dream." The status quo changed greatly after Martin Luther King Jr. gave his "I Had a Dream" speech, as well as many events before it. Now there was no more separation, no more separated schools, no more separated facilities. White students and black students were mixed together in the same schools. There was a sense of equality going around in the society, and it was all backed up by the 14th Amendment, which came into place.